Hey, how's it going guys, and welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another interview. In today's interview, I had the absolute honour of interviewing three-time Olympian, world and European short course champion, Commonwealth champion, and the queen of medley swimming, Miley. In this interview, Hannah will be discussing how she's been doing over the pandemic, her experiences at the Olympics, and talking about her incredible swimming journey so far. If you would like to check Hannah out, her social media links will be in the description below, so make sure you check them out. Before we get into this video, make sure you subscribe if you're new around here, like this video and share it with your friends and family. You definitely don't want to miss this interview. So enough of me talking, let's get on with the interview. Enjoy. So it is with great pleasure and to be able to have this awesome opportunity to have three-time Olympic swimmer, world and European short course champion and Commonwealth champion, Miley. It's fantastic to have you on, Hannah. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's awesome to be here.
First of all, I would just like to ask, how have you been doing over the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been mixed. I think the first couple of weeks, I felt I was on the ball. I was going to go, right, I'm going to work on my land work, do some pre-pool mobility work. Was on the ball doing our Zoom workouts with my team, and then between week 3 and week 9 did hit a bit of a dip, because I think then we just weren't sure, there was no end in sight to how long lockdown was going to be. The longer you're out the water as well, the more I just felt really quite down about it. But definitely my dog certainly saved me.
Oh.
My puppy Poppy, she kind of taught me an awful lot during lockdown. The ability about, resilience, that bounce back, but also, the ability of trying to not stress about things you can't control. So she doesn't know that we're in a pandemic. As long as she goes out for the toilet, has her walk, has her food, and loves you unconditionally, like for her, that's set. So it kind of gave me a chance to reflect. And yeah, it's been really good, actually. Got an opportunity to do some open water stuff, worked a lot on my sort of like shoulder and hip mobility. So I do feel like land work now I can be a little bit stronger and a bit more effective. Got my Pilates teacher qualification too, so I was able to be quite productive with my time, both for myself in training but also supporting myself for life out with swimming as well. So yeah, it's kind of just been an ongoing learning experience, and yeah, it's been tough. It's been incredibly tough, but at the same time just grateful for some of the opportunities that I've gotten.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, just like you said, it's just trying to take your mind away from things, as well as like doing land-based training and trying not to make your mind constantly think about going back in the pool. So it's fantastic to hear that you've qualified for, well, you're a Pilates teacher now. And so yeah, as you said, I noticed at the end of last year that you found out that you had been swimming for a couple of years with a hernia rotator cuff.
Yes.
How was rehab for you, and how were you able to maintain such a positive mood throughout with what swimmers dread of having, which is an injury?
I can tell you it's not been a super positive journey. It's been quite frustrating. So it was during lockdown. I kind of thought the last competition I had was the Edinburgh International meet, and my shoulder was at its worst. I was just getting a lot of pain, reaching for things, and it would just flare up, die down, flare up. And I could never predict what was happening with it. And when it flared up, it was just really uncomfortable and quite sore. During lockdown, I kind of thought, well, it's going to give it an opportunity to maybe settle out. But it started partially dislocating. My shoulder was like popping out of the joint and back in, doing like, just putting on a jacket. So I kind of knew that there's really something not right with this. Had scans in 2018, and it came back saying that there was nothing wrong. It was all clear. It was the healthiest my shoulder looked. Apparently the doctor was just like, yeah, you've got really healthy shoulders. And I was like, doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
So get another scan, and then again another doctor looked at it and said, no, we can't see anything. So there was going to be like an intervention brought in to see, well, is it to do with maybe being hypersensitive? Am I overthinking things? So I got a second opinion from a doctor down in Manchester, and yeah, he just basically pointed out this big white line across my subscapularis, so one of my rotator cuff muscles, saying it's torn. And he said, we look back at your scans from 2018 and the tear was there as well, but it was just very small. So from 2018 until now, it had obviously gotten significantly bigger. And I was kind of faced with a bit of a difficult decision. So it was relief knowing that, okay, so, I knew what was up with my body. I knew something wasn't right. So it was like nice to have that answer, to finally be like, okay, that solidifies everything that I thought. The opposite side was obviously devastation, because I thought, why couldn't have been picked in 2018. But at the same time, you know, my sort of main goal was I want to be able to still swim pain-free. So I, you know, regardless of whether I chose to have the surgery or not, ultimately I needed to look after my shoulder health. So made the decision in October to get it done because, again, you know, I don't know what the next year was going to hold. So I thought, well, I'd rather give my body an opportunity for getting back into training, hopefully being more pain-free. And the rehab process in itself was actually quite a nice stepping stone for setting goals, for keeping me moving forward through lockdown and kind of overcoming all the challenges that we've had with the pandemic. So yeah, it was brutal, reacted really badly to the pain relief medication to start with. Don't wish that upon anybody, but I used, you know, we were allowed back in after the surgery. I had 2 weeks out for the wounds to heal. And yeah, I kind of started using the water when I was allowed to get back in the water as part of my recovery. And I loved it. It was quite nice to know that, you know, the environment that I worked so hard in, the journey that I've had with the water is now actually helping heal me as well. So the first milestone was getting into a streamline position and got into streamline position. Next bit was to try and build up the strength. So 3 phases of return to participation, which was basically just getting back in the water, return to sport, which was getting back into swimming, and then return to performance. So I'm kind of at the return to performance side. So it's been quite a nice steady progression. Still, there's little bits that I kind of need to keep going and I need to be patient with it. And you have good weeks, you have rubbish weeks. I mean, even last week, I wasn't in a good place with it. My shoulder was getting a little bit more grumbly, kind of flaring up a bit, and my headspace as well just wasn't great. So it does peak and trough, and I think I get a little bit impatient, as I think most athletes are. You just want to be better now. And going from, you know, working at roughly 100% capacity to then only being able to work at like 60%, can be quite hard to deal with. So setting myself little challenges, you know, there's loads of different exercises that I guess entertain me, which has kind of kept my motivation levels going. And at the minute, the progression now has kind of leveled off a little bit. So it's not the sort of steep progression a couple of weeks post-surgery. I'm now looking at those little marginal gains, and I don't notice them until I look back the previous week. And that's kind of one of the things that lockdown has taught me, is about that self-reflection and reminding myself that, okay, I'm frustrated with how things are right now, but let's have a look compared to where it was last week. Was it better? Was it worse? If it's worse, what can you do to make it better? And if it's better, celebrate and enjoy those positive moments, because sometimes they can be quite hard to come by. So yeah, so it's been definitely a huge learning experience. And I think being 31 and kind of survived a career in swimming without too many major issues, it's not been too bad. So I'm kind of excited to see where the rest of my swimming career goes, but also knowing that I can hopefully get back in the water, be pain-free once you know, my competitive career finishes.
Yeah, and that's fantastic to hear that you're still wanting to and have that determination and drive to get back in the water at the age of 31. And it's great to hear that you're on that progression slope. And it was great, open and honest answer about like going through an injury, because it's, yes, you have your down times, but you also have your positive times as well. Even if it, like you say, just little goals, even just getting into a streamlined position again in the pool when we're back in the water, like they are massive goals, like from an injury. So that was a really great story about your injury there, Hannah. Moving on into your swimming career, your dad, Patrick Miley, has been your coach from the very start of your swimming career when you swam for Gary Swimming Club. What is it like to have a parent as your coach?
It's quite funny. I do get asked that a couple of times, and to be honest, I don't really know it any different. Growing up, my dad was so fascinated with water. He was involved in swimming a lot longer before I came around, and I think in 1996 he developed a device called an aquapacer, which is a waterproof tempo, like a waterproof metronome. We have the tempo trainer nowadays, so it's a byproduct from that. And at the Sydney Olympics, he was able to work, or leading into the Sydney Olympics, worked with quite a few Olympic athletes. I think it was something like 1 in 3 Olympic gold medalists had actually worked and used his aquapacer device. So wow. For me, you know, it was really exciting to sort of, you know, see him go and travel the world, work with all these swimmers, and he would always come back with like posters. And I remember when he went to Stanford in the States, and he came back, I think, with a Misty Hyman poster, a Lenny Kreiselberg poster, and I would have them all over my wall. So he always came back with so many good stories. And then I kind of started falling into swimming a little bit more. He wanted myself and my 2 younger brothers to be safe in and around water, so taught us to swim And then we went through the council lessons and I joined the swimming club. And I guess I just kind of found I was a bit more coordinated in water than I was on land. I've got really floppy ankles. I can trip over on a flat floor. And I just felt a bit more graceful. I'm not a big athlete, and I think we worked a lot on technique. And for me, I definitely think it's my sort of headstrong stubbornness and drive to want to prove people wrong. And my dad's heritage is Irish, so I do feel like I've possibly inherited a little bit of fighting Irish and wanting to be the last man standing.
Yeah.
So for him, I kind of appreciate that. And I, there was no way I was ever going to win an argument with him regarding swimming, because he just knew so much more than what I did. And I knew from the word go that it would just not be, it was pointless. I can't say, oh, we can't do that set, that's too hard. Because I thought, he's worked with Olympic gold medalists and world record holders. So I was like, I definitely have no leg to stand on. But as a coach, he wasn't a full-time coach. He was a volunteer coach. His full-time job was a helicopter pilot.
All right.
So he would fly helicopters over the North Sea. So there were some training sessions where he couldn't be there. So he would have to, for him, he loved having a logbook because he could script the sessions. And if he wasn't there because he had an early flight, leave the script out, I would then take it, and there would be a volunteer coach to run that set. And then I would try and feed back the information, how the set was, whether it was good, whether it wasn't good. And I'm quite a literal person, so I'm being as honest as I can, whether it was good or a bad session. And then from that, he would then create the next couple of sessions, I guess, based on the feedback I gave him. So I guess over time, our relationship came about trust and communication. And, he had to trust that some of the afternoon sessions I was training on my own. School would finish and I would go over to the pool, which was next door, have a lane on my own. He might be there as a coach, he might not be. So if he wasn't there, I'd have to either get a lifeguard to time or self-time using the sort of the analog clock, and make as much notes as I can in the session and then feed back to him when I got back. And if he was able to be there, then it was good to have that one-to-one. And he was always in his uniform as well, his pilot's uniform on poolside. So I think that respect and trust, he had to trust that I would not miss the session and just think, oh, I'll just skive that. For me, I mentioned before, I'm literal, so I just couldn't have it within me to not turn up for the session. But also I had to trust that he would listen to what I'd say and the feedback I'd give him, and he'd make the best calls and the best decision on the type of session that we as swimmers needed. And I think from that, I just loved the fact, because I knew how hard he worked. Going to competitions for me felt like the reward, that was me being able to give back. So if I could perform really well, it would showcase the hard work and effort that he put in as a coach. And just being able to kind of go on the journey together, going, traveling around the world, camps and competitions, it was pretty cool. And, he was the one person that I truly trusted with my sport. So the relationship kind of worked. And I always worked on the theory of, if it's not broke, why try and fix it?
Yeah.
We'd have our disagreements, like any relationship does, but I think it's important to have that, to then be able to communicate and come back from it. So, I think it was important for us to have those sort of ups and downs, because, I think he's learned to respect me a lot more now that I'm older, and I, still respect him a lot as well, as I've gotten older, and as our sort of relationship and commitment to each other have kind of kept going. So it's definitely been a good working balance. Like, there was times he was quite strict. You knew when you had to behave and kind of get on with things, but he would every now and then show his fun side. And that's the bit that I loved. He knew how to keep you engaged, keep you motivated, and keep you going in the sport. So for me, I kind of always appreciated that. And he knows me very well. So I kind of thought, it's the best possible coach you could get, someone who truly understands and knows what you've gone through. So that's kind of why I stuck with him.
Exactly, yeah. And like you say, it's incredible to hear how much of a great bond that you and your dad have. And it obviously shows throughout your swimming career that it's, like you say, if it isn't broke, why fix it? And your career has been absolutely outstanding, like I'm going to mention now. You've been on the international scene of swimming for over a decade now. Your first international call-up was the European Juniors in 2005, and you won a silver medal in the 400 meters individual medley. Could you be able to explain what your experience was like as a junior swimming?
Yeah. So that was actually really cool. So from a youngster, you have like little targets trying to make district or regional competitions. Then once you've reached that, you think, right, let's get times for nationals. And then it's trying to get from nationals to like the British summer meet. I think at the time it was called Bag Cats, the British age group category. And then from there, it's like, oh, well, the European Youth Olympic Festival. And I was never quick enough to qualify. The times just felt so far out of reach. So it was like, right, try and make it. Didn't quite make it. Another year to try and make it. Still didn't make it. And then it was like, well, okay, missed the European Youth Olympics. Let's try the European Juniors. And again, first year, because we only allowed 2 years at trying for the European Juniors. 2004, I didn't make the cut. So it was my last year at trying to make it in 2005, and I qualified. And that was really exciting. The sort of being able to be part of that, GB team, have the team kit. And I just remember thinking, there's loads of t-shirts in this bag. And just that sense of, oh my goodness, we've got all this kit. And my dad had been selected as a coach to go as well. So we were kind of just oohing and ahhing at all the different bits of kit that we got given. And then going away as well, it was really exciting, but slightly intimidating, because I live in the northeast of Scotland. It's quite small. It's not exactly a really big population, compared to maybe Edinburgh or Glasgow or the central belt of Scotland, and even down south in England. So I definitely felt very much on the outside on the team, just this kind of person from up north, who's just kind of flown in, reflecting all the sunlight as well. The amount of sun cream I had to pack, because it was an outdoor swimming pool as well.
Oh, was it? Where was it at?
It was in Hungary, in Budapest.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
nice.
So it was on Margaret Island, the pool there. And and it was brilliant fun. So got to experience, I think we had to get a ferry from our hotel across the Danube to the Margaret Island to then go to the venue for the competition. And the whole thing was really surreal. And the bit as well that felt quite intimidating was seeing all the other competitors your age from just different countries, and the height of them as well. It was just like, oh my goodness, you're so tanned and so tall. And you just kind of go up and swim the heat, swimming outdoors. I think the heat was okay. And then I got into the final and I was next to Katinka Hosu. And I just remember really loving the sort of energy and that sort of drive and that fight of, what, let's get at this. Let's just, go and race. And then I think to come away with the silver medal, once I finished, my face was bright red, which made me look even paler, but the effort and the intent, you could tell, was just from how red my face had gone. And it was brilliant. Just being on the podium was so much fun. It was just really encouraging, and I guess a confidence build for me, because my dad had mentioned we were watching like Jana Klochkova, the World Championships in 2005 in Montreal as well, who were the competitors of my age that had qualified for that senior meet. So like Katie Hoff, and just looking at all the different swimmers. And my dad dropped a little statistic saying, out of the European swimmers, those who make the Olympic team have been on the podium at a European Championships. So I kind of thought, well, I've got my silver medal here. That's another little step towards, actually, it could be possible to make an Olympic team. So it was a real eye-opener and a good confidence booster as well. Just exposure, just being able to get out and race. And it was before I turned 16 as well. So there were a lot of younger ones there so I kind of felt like I was not the oldest in the European junior category, but, kind of teetering towards the older side. So you're very conscious that there's always the younger ones coming through. And for me, chasing the people out in front, but also keeping an eye on the people coming behind, just kind of kept me quite grounded. So it was a brilliant experience. And again, my first cap for GB, getting used to the team meetings, the different dynamics of the group, sharing with somebody that you hadn't been with before. And it's funny because I still got, like, my dad found the video of my race. So I actually still have the race. If you want it, I can send it through.
Oh, that would be brilliant, yeah.
From 2005. It's really cool. And we're all just in like costumes. Like, I hated knee suits. And for a very long time, apologies, my puppy's just decided at this very moment to pick up a toy and drag it across the floor.
Oh, it's quite all right.
That was it. I just preferred being in a costume, and I had raced in a costume up until I think it was until the Olympic trials in 2008. That was when I moved towards the knee suit, but I was terrible at breaststroke. So for me, I just felt so restricted wearing a knee suit. My breaststroke was even worse. So it's funny being able to look back at those little things. And I was just just like a really pale white stick, really swimming, just enjoying and loving the moment.
Brilliant. That sounds like a fantastic junior career. And like you say, you just have to like be patient as well. Like you've been patient throughout your junior career. And then did you say it was your last chance
Yes.
at juniors? And then
Yeah.
all the hard work just clearly shows that it paid off, and you ended up going to your first European juniors and getting a silver medal. Like, what more could you ask for? So going on from that, I mentioned at the start that you are a three-time Olympic qualifier, competing at the 2008 Beijing, London 2012, and Rio 2016 Olympics. Could you be able to tell us what it was like from being one of the youngest on the GB squad in 2008 to then being one of the more experienced swimmers in Rio 2016?
I like your phrasing there. I thought you were going to say one of the oldest there.
No.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So it kind of starts with 2006. The Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, I was quite severely ill, and we had this qualification set up. Bill Sweetenham set up that you had to qualify for the European Championships either at the Commonwealth Games or the British Championships straight after. So the Commonwealth Games were in March because it was over in Australia. And I just missed the qualifying time. So I flew back from Australia, went straight to Sheffield and had to do the qualification there. And luckily I did it. So got to go to the Senior European Championships in 2006. But to get to the World Championships in 2007, you had to have been on the European Championship team. So it was really making it quite difficult to, the teams were getting smaller and smaller because the steps in order to get from one team to the next was getting a lot harder. So I think I had the time, I think something like 4:45 I had to go. And I thought, yep, okay, I should be able to do this. Went 4:46 in the heats. It was back in Budapest, back in this, Margaret Island. I thought, I've got this in the bag, always go faster in the final. And I ended up going like 4:47. So completely messed it up. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether it was just first senior meet or just, again, being outdoors. I didn't prepare enough. I got cold. There was lots of factors, and it was just a big kick in the face for me because I thought, I've been really successful coming towards the end of my junior career, trying to step into senior swimming, and I completely missed the first step. So I didn't go to the World Championships. We had the British Nationals running at the same time as the Worlds. And the bit that was a little bit sore was the time I did at the British meet in Manchester would have actually won me a silver medal at the World Championships. Oh. And if you won a medal at the Worlds, you were pre-selected for the Olympic Games, meaning you could also go to the European Championships in 2008 and European short course. So I think there was like a total of 4 international competitions I missed out on because of that one swim in 2006.
Wow. So
it was actually a really good moment for me because I kind of realized, I need to make sure that doesn't happen again. I need to learn from my mistakes and actually use that as a lesson to move forward. So I always feel like, everything happens for a reason. And the reason for me not getting on that team is it's not easy. You can't just assume. You have to be prepared that things aren't going to go your way. So coming into 2008, I kind of was quite nervous, feeling like, how am I going to qualify? The opportunity's there, but, am I good enough? Is it going to happen? And they switched it around so that the heats were in the evening, finals were in the morning. And I think you had to do the qualifying time in the heats and then come in the top 2 in the final. Right. So if you didn't do the qualifying time, it doesn't matter whether you come first or second, you weren't going to go. So again, it was a really tough selection process. And it was the first time as well, I think, at that competition at trials that my dad was really scared of me because right. I think I was just so focused in the zone. We had like set times for the call room and he would come over and think, oh, do you not need to be there? And I think I just gave him this really pissed off look as if to say, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get there. And he backed off. And I broke the European record. And it was one of the best sort of swims that I'd done, been on the Olympic team. And then afterwards we got paraded around and it didn't really sink in until we went to go and collect our kit again. So we love a freebie. Yeah. So the kit was just incredible in the whole process of getting, fitted for your tracksuit. Then once you go to another section, it was like, there's your bag, here's your shoes, here's your, Panasonic camera, and it was just loads of stuff. And it was quite overwhelming, but exciting at the same time. So going into the Olympics, for the first time, you're very much like a rabbit caught in headlights and you've got one or two decisions. You can either just, carry on to the other side of the road, know where you're going, or you can just freeze. And I kind of feel I sat between the two. It was very overwhelming because you just want to go and explore, but you're very mindful that swimming's the first week. You've got to stay on top of what you know and try not get too distracted. But it's very difficult when you're all of a sudden surrounded by the top swimmers in the world. And I'd never experienced that. I gone from racing European juniors to a first European senior meet to then racing against the best swimmers in the world, like the senior guys. You got Michael Phelps trying to make the historic, 8 gold medals. And it was very overwhelming. And performing in the heats in the evening, finals in the morning, again, really kind of was just so different. I'd done it in the trials, but I just felt I wasn't able to replicate it the way I wanted it to go in 2008. So I was left feeling quite disheartened, feeling like I'd failed myself, I failed my coach, I didn't quite get the experience that I wanted to get from the games. So with the Olympics being in London, I kind of felt, well, I need to capitalize on that and take it to the next level. So each games kind of brings its own little story, its own kind of life lesson. And I've kind of learned as I've gotten older to not sweat the small stuff, to remember it's just another gala, or the fact there's just the odd, couple of people watching, and just being confident enough that you can stay focused on what it is that you need to do. Don't worry about the distractions. There's time to enjoy that afterwards. You're there to kind of do your job. So definitely going into Rio, I felt a lot more settled, and even after Rio, I was able to kind of appreciate the games itself rather than just beat myself up of, that performance wasn't where I wanted it to be, or it was really good, but I'm not going to get an opportunity to go in Rio, to be in Rio again, so make the most of it. So yes, the Olympics are certainly very, very special, and each one's given me a lot of life lessons, and it's been great. It's been really, really good fun, and a lot of learning from it.
That's brilliant to hear, and there are amazing stories there, Hannah, like going from your trial process in Beijing 2008, and obviously the difference of swimming in finals in the morning and heats on the afternoon. It's very, very different to what it is now, but that's very similar to what Tokyo is going to be like, hopefully, if it goes ahead. So what was it like competing at the home Olympic Games in London 2012? Because I remember watching you coming out for your 400 IM final, and the crowd was just overwhelmed. Like, you could hear the roar even from like the announcers announcing your name, obviously, and then you can still hear the crowd just absolutely screaming your name and cheering you on, and it gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, it pretty much everything that you just said there. It was kind of funny because, again, I just don't know whether being in the northeast of Scotland, we are quite far away from London. So the hype and the buzz, it was there. You were reminded, but it wasn't always in your face. As soon as we traveled from our holding camp in Edinburgh down to London, it all of a sudden hit you. Every other billboard, the newspapers, the buses, it was all signposted that this is the Olympic host city. This is where the Olympics are happening. So again, it was a little bit overwhelming, but it was really exciting. And there was no point in having any music on when you walked out for any of your races, because it would just drown it out. And it was just so exciting. That level of energy really lifts you up, because you just think, these guys are behind me, let's do this, let's go for it. So yes, I never underestimate the power of like crowd support. You can really use it to your advantage. And and still to this day, it also gives me goosebumps. And it was such a huge honor, because not many athletes do get to experience a home games like that. So I was very, very lucky to have made the team, and very lucky to have been part of it. So definitely one of my favorite memories is having getting the opportunity to race at home games. It was pretty cool.
That I can imagine. Like, I wish I was there, but I was in Mallorca on holiday at the time, so they had
nice.
they had TVs in like the lobbies and the reception, and I would just, as soon as I got ready for for my evening meal, ran straight downstairs, watched the telly, and then I just saw you come out. And even though they have like the TVs on like very, very low volume, I could still hear the crowd when you came out. It was absolutely fantastic. As you mentioned, that's one of your like highlights of your career. But if you had to choose one special moment throughout your international career that you would never forget, what would that be, if you could pick one?
I'll tell you one, but there is kind of a second one.
You can give the second one as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'm always kind of sneaky like that. I definitely think 2014. for me, the home games, Commonwealth Games for me was one of the year leading into it wasn't one of my favorites, but I think that's one of the reasons why it made the final moment. I just found the moment in 2014 was just so spectacular and so special for me because of how awful the lead up was. Right. I mean, I say awful, it was more awful for my ego, possibly more so than anything physically. So from September through 2013 through to I think about June time 2014, every time I raced 400 IM, I got my butt kicked pretty much. And it was the first time that I think I was getting seriously beat by another British swimmer. So Amy Wilmot was making her mark, kind of coming through, getting faster and faster. And I just stayed stagnant. No matter how hard I trained, no matter what I was doing at altitude, really pushing myself, trying different things in the gym, it just wasn't translating into my racing, any of my racing that I did. And it was so frustrating. And I was really losing a lot of confidence in myself. I was doubting myself. I thought, what's the point? Why is this not working? And then on top of that, because Glasgow, home soil, home games, there was a lot of pressure for me to defend my title. So I had that weighing on top, and it was a really heavy weight to have on my shoulders. And I think the frustrating part was a lot of people just assumed it would have been easy. Like, oh, you've got this in the bag, it'll be fine, you'll win it. And it was like, no, right. This is actually a lot harder than I think a lot of people realize. And a lot of people weren't aware of, I think, the sort of mental struggle I was going through that. And yeah, I was just trying to hang on, just trying to kind of find, why isn't what I was doing in training passing through into my competition? It just didn't make any sense, no matter how hard I tried, no matter what different tactics I did. For me, it just wasn't good enough when I raced. And the breakthrough kind of happened once I'd qualified, Commonwealth Games in 2010, 2006, 400 IM was always on the last day. So for Glasgow, because they were like, right, let's get our top swimmers swimming on day one to sort of kick off the games, they put like myself and Ross Murdoch, 400 IM and 200 breaststroke on day one. Right. So not only was the 400 IM on day one, it was the first event. And not only was it the first event, I was the first heat. So again, It was like more pressure added on because of that. So the expectation I felt was huge. So after I'd swum the heat, a lot of people were like, yeah, that looked really easy, looked really smooth. And it wasn't. It felt really hard to go that time in the heat. I thought, I've got to go a lot quicker in the final. And that felt like I was, kind of maxing it. And then going into the final, the last thing that I remember my dad saying to me was, you've worked so hard this year. And he says, all you've got left to do is to just race, just enjoy it. He's like, stop worrying about the numbers, stop worrying about the times, and just do what you do and race. And he says, it doesn't matter the outcome, just enjoy it. You deserve it. So in the call room, I kind of thought, you know what, I think I just need to do that. I just need to stop worrying about my time, stop worrying about the numbers, and literally just race. So walking out behind the block, I decided to take a risky strategy and completely change up my race plan. Normally I hold back a little bit on the fly, and then I try and come through on backstroke and then really hit hard on breaststroke and freestyle. So for me, the second half of my race is kind of my strength. So going into the games, I thought, you know what, I think I need to change up my strategy a little bit. It's been used against me a couple of times. So my personal best, I think, for 100 fly is like a 101, 101.8 or something like that. So I went out in a 62, which a little bit suicidal, I think. But
I've done many 400 IMs like that. It's not ideal. Not ideal.
No, definitely not. So I kind of thought, I've just got to go for it. So I did, and I went out and then went onto the backstroke, and you can never really see where you are until you're on the freestyle leg. And I kind of thought, if I'm roughly in line with Amy or ahead of Amy, I think this would be a really good spot. So I went onto the backstroke, went into the breaststroke, turned from the breaststroke onto freestyle, and all I could see was Amy's feet. And I thought, pants. Okay, well, typical me. I still wanted to keep racing. I wasn't going to give up there, 100 meters to go. So kept racing, and then I noticed that I was no longer looking at her ankles. It was her hips, and then her shoulders, and then her head. And we came into the last turn, and as I turned, you talk about the crowd in London when you walk on poolside, but the crowd in Glasgow underwater was something I will never forget. Like, it just was so loud, and it's so bizarre to hear it so clearly underwater. And I just kicked home. Like my whole body was on fire, as it normally is for a 400 IM. And I saw my teammates like waving them, me on the side, and reached for the wall. And the first thing I saw was the red dot on the block, signifying that I'd won. And not only that, I saw the time afterwards. And it just hit me, like the whole year, everything hit me. It wasn't so much, oh my God, my time, I've come first, this, that, and the other. It was like, I can do it.
Yeah.
I actually overcame my sort of fear of failure. I overcame my sort of self-doubt, the amount of pressure I was putting on. I didn't let it ruin me in that moment. So I kind of thought, Pete puts his muscles up, and all the sort of like big swimmers show off their muscles. So I thought I'd try and sit on the lane up and try and look cool, and it fell straight off. It did not look cool whatsoever. And just being on the podium, it wasn't so much the first place. I got so emotional. As I say, it was just the whole lead up, like the whole sort of self-realization that at the age of 24, about to turn 25, that I can still perform and I can still progress. I'm not over yet. I'm not done. And it does take a lot of patience, consistency, and persistence to get to those moments, and trust yourself. Well, I was obviously trusting myself, but I trusted my dad completely leading into that year. So yeah, it meant a lot to me on that. And I guess my second sort of moment would be Rio, the 4th place. As agonizing as it was, that's possibly been one of my biggest life lessons. Just from dealing with the expectation, coping with, it was one of the best swims I'd ever done at Olympic Games. And just because it wasn't a medal, does that devalue my self-worth? Am I any less worth of an athlete because I don't have an Olympic medal? It really gave me a lot of perspective and kind of grounded me to the person that I am right now. And I can safely say that I enjoy my sport, I think, a lot more because of that moment. I could have very easily stepped away from the sport and just left it, because it broke me badly. Like, it really did affect me. But I really tried to stay strong and rebuild myself. And I definitely feel that it's worked on my resilience a lot better, and I've come back a lot stronger from it. So yeah.
That's amazing to hear, and that's an absolutely excellent story there, Hannah. Like, your story about persistence, resilience, everything. Like, you've gone through everything throughout your career, and it's amazing to hear that you're still going and you're still driving and wanting to be the best that you can be. But the more important thing is that you're enjoying the sport a lot more now.
Yeah.
And so one of your quotes that I found, and what I find so inspiring, because it means a lot to me as well, because what you said is, I'm not the biggest, I'm not the strongest, but I will be the most hardest working athlete I can be. And that's very similar to me, because I'm not the tallest, because I'm 21 now, and these 16-year-old girls are towering over me now. But like you say, like, I think that's such an incredible quote, and it's what makes like incredible athletes like you so versatile, resilient, and determined. So how are you able to like maintain that mentality throughout your career?
That is actually a very good question. It's not been a straight line. It's not been, right, I figured it out and it's just stayed. A bit like the road to recovery from rehab, that you have your ups and your downs. I think it comes down to how you value your success. Do you value success based on numbers, based on personal best times, or is it medals, or is it achieving the small processes, setting goals, achieving goals? Like, everyone's got their own sort of set thought of what their success is. Or if you're young, probably success means winning,
Yeah.
which is fine. I went through that as well. And, it's always the cherry on top, winning and, doing personal best times. And I think you kind of have that moment of, well, what is success when you hit that plateau phase? And, success can come in so many different shapes and sizes and different forms. And I think it takes a really strong person to really identify what that success is. And one of the quotes that I found recently, actually, which I love, confidence isn't about I will swim fast. It's I will be fine whether I swim fast or not. So it's being confident in that you are going to be fine, regardless of the outcome, because ultimately we don't have control really of our outcome. Whether we're on the podium, you can be on the podium and still be 5 seconds away from your PB. So is that a good swim or not? And then you can come like 6th or 7th and do a PB. But again, because you're not on the podium, does that mean that's any worse off or better than the gold medal? So it's really how you perceive your sport, not to worry about the pressures from everybody else. And yeah, and I think, again, being isolated in the northeast of Scotland, I kind of don't feel too much pressure
Yeah.
because I am just, up with the penguins and kind of away from everything. So I get to kind of chill out a little bit more. But at the same time, you do get faced with some pressures. So it's allowing yourself to try something, and if you fail, not be afraid of it, not see it as like the worst thing in the world. Like, I made so many mistakes in my career. Like, I've even, had a competition where I completely forgot my racing suit at the age of 21. You think you should know how to do things by then. So I've made mistakes, but what I've not done is sit and let them linger, sit and let them sit on my shoulders and kind of drag me through it. I kind of like accept it. I've made a mistake. What am I going to do? Always have a swing, always check your swing bag before you leave. And, and you can learn from it and use it to sort of move on to the next phase. So, but yeah, you will have moments where you get up and down. And I think having quotes, having something to kind of help pull you out of the dark moments or the down moments is really helpful. There was one year I wrote the word relentless. My boyfriend at the time, now fiance, helped me draw it and have it on the back of my door. So that was the first thing that I saw in the morning, last thing I saw at night. And whether I had a bad day or a good day, that word always just zoned me back into where I needed to be in kind of that correct mindset. So everyone's got different trigger words, music, movements, exercises. It's trying to work out what works for you. But yeah, that quote for me definitely summed up, I think, me as an athlete, but a lot of other athletes as well, because it's universal. It's, what is your version of success?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a quote that I certainly live up to, like, to this very day. Like I said, because I'm not like the tallest or the strongest in what I do, but I will definitely put in 100% into training, into a competition, and the results are just starting to show now because I'm quite a late developer, like within the sport. I only made my first nationals at the age of 18.
That's amazing.
A lot of people then would have just stopped by then, and there was times where I was like that. But like seeing your quote and like hearing athletes' stories, that's what helped push me on as well, and like not be bogged down or anything like that. Yes, I didn't make it, I just missed out, but I'm going to try again next year. And then went to nationals at the 18 and I got a silver medal. So
nice.
It was just
well done.
In the 400 IM, funny enough, so we had quite a similar path. But and I think that's what I'm enjoying the sport more now as well, is just and I appreciate it a lot more, especially throughout this pandemic. So that was a brilliant message there, Hannah. Thank you. And that is all my questions for today. But before you go, do you mind if we play a quick game of how many times did I swim that race?
Oh dear. Yes. Okay.
So this game is where I have selected 2 events. Of yours. Well, 2 events, and I have went through individual best times on ASA rankings, and I counted how many times you've swam these 2 races.
I do apologize.
No, it's all right. So including including heats and finals, how many times do you think that you've swum the 400 meter free long course?
Ooh.
I'll give you 3 guesses, and I'll say higher or lower.
Sorry. That's okay. It's knowing where to start.
Yeah.
Do I overshoot it or do I undershoot? 50?
Oh, higher.
Oh, okay. 80.
Higher.
Oh, flipping heck.
One more guess.
125.
Oh, very close. You swam the 400 free long course 156 times in your career so far. So your next event, which I'm probably sure that you'll guess what it is 400 IM. How many times do you think you've swum that throughout your career?
Like 230.
I will give you that, because it's 231.
Oh.
231 times.
I'm
gonna have to give you it.
200. I was like, pick a number. I was like, okay, 30.
So my next follow-up question after that is, can you remember the first time where you swam the event and what time you did?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was very young.
Yeah.
I think was I not like 11, and I must have been like 5 minutes 40 or something like that. Was this long course or short course?
Long course, sorry.
Oh, long course. Well, yeah, still it could be very close to 6 minutes.
I think you'll be surprised.
Oh, now you throw me. No, I'll stick with 5 minutes 40 at the age of 11.
You were, from what I've got, you were 13.
Okay.
Scottish national age groups.
Yep.
And you went 5:27.
Oh, that's not too bad.
So
yeah,
very, very impressive for a 13-year-old.
That's not too bad. Okay, yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little game, and
I did.
I had to recount several times just to make sure I got it right.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. Like, creds to you for doing that 400 IM that many times. Like, I counted mine as well, and I had like 50, and I was like, oh dear. But no, thank you very much for doing this interview with me, Hannah. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. I had a brilliant time talking to you, chatting to you, and it was really great to hear your stories, your messages, and yeah, and hopefully we'll be back in the water very soon.
Yes.
Again, thank you for this amazing opportunity, and I wish you well, and I hope I see you again on poolside very soon.
Yes, we'll hopefully see you on a poolside very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.